All right, Jesse on fire. Welcome back. So we are now going to do episode 5 of the Charlie Kirk is Alive series. And I'm going to tell you right now, this one is a little bit impromptu. But I told you guys that what I was going to start doing in these next series of episodes was I was going to start pointing at other creators that are very intelligent, who are accurately recognizing problematic things that are developing that don't make any sense. And what we're going to do is insert my hypothesis and see if it answers the question, because it literally always does. So this is a clip of Candace from that Project Constitution shared. There it is. He shared it this morning. I watched the first 45 seconds of it and stopped it. And I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is going to be exactly what I'm talking about. We're also going to take a look at part of Wolves and Finance's Fort Huachuca thing. And this is essentially exactly what we're going to do with this episode right now. Okay. So if you have not watched the first 4 episodes, go to my playlist. That is, I believe Charlie Kirk is Alive, The Manufactured Martyr. Very first playlist you'll see if you go to my channel and go to playlist. I fixed it. I realized that I had a weird setting on, and so it was misordering all of them. Now it'll play in order. So as soon as you play the playlist, it'll take you to episode 1, and then it'll auto play 2, 3, 4. And in an effort to not be lazy, it looks like this, right? And then the last one down there that you can see was his death fake. That is one that I actually did 2 months ago, where I had on a physicist that was showing the science that the crack dump, they can actually triangulate where the shot was taken from, and the fact that it didn't hit Charlie and it went into the back of an SUV. I'll let you guys look at that. I am wildly incapable of knowing what I am hearing or looking at with that science, so I don't generally consider it like part of my presentation, because I don't understand it, but a lot of people do, and they're all say that it's credible. Okay. So we're going to do that right now. Let me go ahead and get back over to Candace, and we are going to start. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, that would be incredible if you guys would do that, because I am working very hard. I hit 600,000 last night, and that was very exciting. Thank you to everybody who has been here along the ride, all the new people and all of the OGs. And if you guys can like this video too, that'd be amazing, and share it, because it's, again, I'm not trying to accomplish anything special with this series, other than if I wasn't as confident as I am that I'm right, then I wouldn't do it. And I just, it's the biggest mystery of the last decade, and I'm pretty sure I solved it. You know what I mean? But again, I'm not making any statements of fact here or making any direct allegations against anyone. It's all a thought experiment. Okay, so let's start right here and let's listen to what Candace is talking about, and then we'll go to the Fort Huachuca stuff. All right, let's do this thing.
Okay, guys, so there is something that has been living in my head rent-free that I feel like I need to open up to the internet about. I feel like TikTokers can help me with this a little bit. Somebody told me that when you're doing an investigation, it's really good to go back to the beginning, and you'll start to recognize things and see things in a new light that don't really make sense. And so I did that with this Charlie Kirk investigation. In the craziness of the...
I wonder if someone pointed her in that direction after watching the last episode that I did, where I was going through the alibi and all of that, or not the alibi, I'm sorry, the official story and the messages between Tyler Robinson. I got more positive feedback about that section than anything else that I've done in this series, which I was very surprised by.
Aftermath of Charlie's assassination, we were told that there were witches who had put a spell on Charlie Kirk, and they had been contacted by a journalist, and then those witches put a spell on him. The journalist published the article on the 8th. Charlie somehow saw it very quickly on the 9th. A priest came over to pray over him, and by the 10th, he was dead.
Very important context. Extremely important context as we get into this portion is right here. Here's the context. As I've talked about a bunch of times, the movie Snake Eyes must have served as some kind of basis that they were building this op around. And this Jezebel thing plays directly into it, because this is the linchpin of the entire theory, okay? Because this, as far as I'm concerned, is impossible. The number of parallels between Snake Eyes and the Charlie Kirk assassination, not possible. Unless you are literally telling me that God foretold this event through a Brian De Palma movie from 1998 starring Nicolas Cage, versus this being a large military slash private operation meant to pull Charlie off the board. And when they do these things, this is the kind of thing that they do. Okay, you have a lot of people organized, you get them all together, and this is a big inside thing of what they're doing, and someone pillow talked. Because let's just go through each of these similarities, and you tell me you think that this is either a coincidence or God made this happen. Okay, one, the assassinated name similarity, Charlie Kirk versus Charles Kirkland. And let's just skip down to number 8 right there, which says wound details. Okay, Kirkland shot on the left side of the neck with gushing blood. I can't possibly stress enough to you that the scene in the De Palma movies, death scene for Charles Kirkland, is identical to Charlie Kirk's. Not like similar, identical. Shot in the exact spot of the neck with blood visually gushing out. It is exactly the same. It is literally exactly the same. Now, you also have the boxer in the movie, Tyler the Executioner, which, of course, is Tyler Robinson, who is the executioner. And in the plot, the Tyler the Executioner is an accomplice in the conspiracy, using his fight to distract from the assassination. That's the real, in the real movie. Okay. Now, the assassin's initials are TR. Okay. Different person, but the assassin, TR. You also have the date happened on September 10th, matching the Kirk assassination, and the hurricane motif. And then my personal favorite, in the movie, you have Hurricane Jezebel. Confirmed, not even up for debate. And in real life, you had Jezebel. Okay. This is the online magazine, and they had an article written about hiring witches to curse Charlie Kirk. Hopefully that was obvious why that context was necessary. She's going to be talking about the Jezebel thing and the witches, and that connects directly to the theory that I have. And anything Snake Eyes related would be part of this entire thing.
Remember this. So I decided to revisit that and was kind of shocked to learn that that journalist was brand spanking new. Like, she had started writing for the first time in May of that year. And just a couple of months later, she decides to head to Etsy, and of all people to cast a spell on and to try a witch's spell, she chooses Charlie Kirk. I don't know, all that just felt a little bit random to me. And then I dug a little deeper into the witches themselves, okay? Turns out the witch's Etsy page was also new, because in the immediate aftermath, Charlie dies on the 10th, Etsy moved to suspend their witch's account, but I went onto Wayback Machine, and yeah, they had been on Etsy for just under a month.
Oh, wow. So you have an online influencer or blogger or journal, whatever, established a few months prior to this, and then they play a critical role that becomes part of the official narrative that Charlie Kirk had been cursed by witches the night before. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, and then they ended up using this other thing over here that had just also started up within the last few months. Almost like it would be part of an operation that was planned for September, right? Because to make sure everybody understands what I'm saying. Okay, what I'm saying is that this would be a very large scale intelligence based operation that includes TPUSA and Cash and Trump and everybody. And so anything that connects directly to the story, you investigate to see if there is a long history of things being done that would be like, okay, well, this predates all of it. And it's like, oh, okay, the Jezebel thing, which connects directly to the Snake Eyes thing, has been, was created within a very short period of time that would very easily serve as part of the official narrative, which is to tie it to leftists and whatever. You know what I mean?
And suddenly someone bought a spell from them and Charlie Kirk was dead. Take a look at their Etsy page that I dug up, because it's going to get a little bit weirder. These Strix sisters did not even have a website, by the way. Like, I'm talking brand new, nobody knew who they were, and they filed for their website, purchased the domain name on September 12th. This is before Etsy suspended their account. They get their website up and going, and it's ready on the 15th. Take a look. And you can do this yourself on Wayback, and you can see that when I say they built this website quickly, like you could buy stuff and buy spells and curses on their website. So suddenly they're like very internet savvy and no one knows who these girls are. But apparently they also had access to the press because they published an article on September 26th in the Daily Mail. We are the witches. I am the witch that cursed Charlie Kirk. Who did they reach out to? How did the journalists know that this was not a hoax? Did they use their real names? I'll show you this article. We are told in the article that a priestess Lilin is the one who cursed Charlie. Again, there are no names used for these individuals anywhere, so I'm just curious how the Daily Mail writer, Nick Allen, and also there was a writer for the Mirror UK, felt confident that they were actually speaking to the individuals who allegedly cursed Charlie Kirk. Did they give them their real names? Can somebody on the internet find their real names? Because I don't know, I'm just thinking that this is another individual that I'd probably like to speak to understand how all of this came together. It just seems very, very strange.
And it is very strange. It's all very weird. Right up until you insert my hypothesis and it makes it make perfect sense. Every single time. Every single time. Every time. This is what I'm talking. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. When I did the video where I was like, why is everyone attacking Candace? Like, you're attacking Candace because she put something up on her video or on her channel that ended up not panning out. Like, this is an open source investigation. And my point was that there are all kinds of people who are looking into all kinds of things, and they give the information to creators and they do videos about them. And then other people see the videos. So they go and they branch off and they investigate those things and they find inconsistencies. And then we talk about them. And what I'm saying is, like, it seems as if any time that they've made a mistake, and it's very, very bizarre what you are looking at, people put it out, but no one can make it connect. No one can make it all make sense because they are still looking at a story where Charlie Kirk gets assassinated. We're like, who would do this? Who would like do this weird thing with the witch's curse and then have the Daily Mail writing about it? This is created a few months before. Like, how does it make sense? And then you go insert Jesse's hypothesis that this is a large operation and they are trying to convince the public that A, Charlie's dead, and B, that it was the result of crazy leftists, and that culturally all of these people were that crazy. They hated him that much that they were going to curse him, and these people over here. Now, obviously, this is true. That's what I'm saying. Is like, that's why people questioned me about this last night on the live stream. They're like, why are you saying that you support Charlie if what you're saying, if what you're hypothesizing is true? And I'm like, because I'm aligned with him and I trust his motives. Because at the end of the day, even if they juke this thing, you saw the reaction. How many people have you seen celebrate the fact that he got murdered? How many, the AOC went in front of Congress and said that Charlie Kirk, in so many words, thought that black people should not have the right to vote. Absolute outright lie. Intentionally worded so she couldn't get sued for it. Okay? It's disgusting. People who's dressed up as him for Halloween, dead version of, like, they're disgusting. So it's like he's pointing at a real problem. Anyway, I don't want to get into the motives again. I've talked about that in other previous episodes. But insert my hypothesis and it answers exactly why any of this would be happening. It's a large intelligence operation.
To me. Am I technically asking the internet to go on a witch hunt? Yeah. I want the names of these priestesses, their real names. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair ask. I have a feeling this might be another piece of the puzzle.
It is. It absolutely is. This is what I'm saying. I've made no secret of this now. Okay. A huge motivator of this series is like, show this to Candace. Like, just if Candace watches this series and she doesn't put it together, or she doesn't, there's no way to know if I'm 100% correct, but she has all of the pieces, all of them, right? All the pieces that I was looking at her talking about and I didn't realize were so important. and it's like no one has a coherent theory of what all of this means except for me, and it literally answers every question. Like every question, except for Tyler Robinson. I can't figure out how they're doing that. Because I don't believe that they would put him in, I don't believe that they would like execute some kid in order to pull this off. And I definitely don't think that they would put some kid in prison for life at all. But I do know that it requires an astronomical amount of power in Utah to tear up the quad at UVU one day after this happened in order to potentially cover up the crime of a fake, or I guess it's not a crime, but, cover up the fact that there probably would not be a whole lot of blood in the area where it appeared like there should have been a whole lot of blood. You know what I mean? Now, that is that portion of the video. Now, moving over to another portion of this where I had talked about this before, which is the Fort Huachuca stuff. So, I mean, I was on the other side of this thing, right? Just squarely only because I fancy myself very good at kind of like looking at people who appear to have a pretty obvious tell and going credibility no or credibility yes. Now, obviously, I'm not right all the time, but Mitch Snow screamed to me as not credible. And then when I found out about his background, I was like, okay, so this guy's not credible. If this entire thing is based on his testimony, then I personally don't believe him. I was never attacking Candace. I was just like, I don't believe him. However, as pointed out by a lot of people in the audience, they're like, look, a guy can be a scumbag and he still can see things. And we did verify that he was at the fort. And it's like, all right, I was wrong about a bunch of stuff. I would have never bet that he was an actual Green Beret ever. I would have bet hard against that being true. I would have bet hard against him having been at Fort Huachuca. I was wrong about both of those things. So like, I would be an idiot to like fully discount that he is telling the truth about something else that I thought for sure was not true. So what we're going to look at here is exactly the same thing. Okay. We're going to go through what Wolves in Finance talks about at Fort Huachuca towards the end, where he starts going through specifics of why he believes that Mitch Snow is telling the truth, and also who is at Fort Huachuca and why he believes that this could have been a point of staging where all of these people were coming to meet in preparation for whatever was going to happen on September 10th. And I will, again, insert my hypothesis and you tell me if it makes sense, that makes more sense, or them, getting every person that Charlie knows together. They're all, listen, so we're going to kill Charlie tomorrow. And no, everybody just needs to be on the same page versus what I'm saying happened. All right. So I'm going to show enough of this just to demonstrate that I do believe that Fort Huachuca has certainly enough going on that it is reasonable to assume that or I guess it's reasonable to assume that there is a possibility that what Mitch is saying is true. And this, if it is true, would solve for a problem that I know my theory requires, which is where would they have done all of the practice runs? Because they definitely did that somewhere. Okay. The reason why Farnsworth beelines over to that wall and then is on the wall instantaneously while his security are smiling and doing something that clearly was not CPR or plugging any kind of, bullet wound, because there's no blood on their hands and their expressions looked extremely bizarre also, which would be answered again if they had rehearsed this 10,000 times. But nonetheless, right? Farnsworth is up on the wall ready to take that video. They shot Charlie and he films a perfect shot of Charlie getting into the SUV, which would be a critical component of what they're doing, because ultimately all of this is being done so they can very clearly document what happened and sell the world on what's going on, right? And then Mikey McCoy, who is standing right next to Charlie when it happens, and he's like this, and then he goes, okay, and then he just beelines. Completely absurd reaction. Why would they be doing that? Because they're doing it on near muscle memory reaction to something they've rehearsed a million times. Had to do it somewhere. They have to do it somewhere. Okay. And so Wolves in Finance is going through, evidence that there are all these connections to Fort Huachuca. And my hypothesis is like, okay, well, this would make sense because this could be exactly where they were doing all of these run throughs, and they staged the thing because they have direct connections to intelligence also. So that's what we're doing here.
I do not understand why people will not listen to Mitch Snow. Then people started noticing a lot of other connections between the people at Turning Point and Fort Huachuca. An account on X.com named Project Constitution has done a great job of investigating this information. For instance, the person who interrogated Mitch Snow was Captain Adam Neff. This is the cousin of Blake Neff at Turning Point. Turning Point's head of PR, Andrew Colvette, has a brother in the military named Robert Colvette. He is the business manager for U.S. Army NETCOM, headquartered at Fort Huachuca. Andrew Colvette has another brother in the military named Lieutenant Colonel Kurt Colvette, who does annual training at Fort Huachuca. This is so outrageous because in the text message that was leaked from Andrew Colvette, he tries to give Erica an alibi by saying, LOL, Erica wasn't in some fort in Tucson. If Andrew Colvette has two brothers who are regularly at Fort Huachuca, he knows exactly what it is. It's not some fort in Tucson. Why is he pretending like he does not know what Fort Huachuca is? That is a lie. And we've been catching these people at Turning Point in a lot of lies. This is supposed to be an organization with Christian values. Why do they lie all the time?
Well, I would say that in the event that we're referencing lies that Candace has pointed out or anything related to this, then if you insert my hypothesis, it would answer all of them. They would be lying because this is a top of the government secret operation whereby, of course, you're going to lie if you are involved in this thing because that is what you do. It would be classified if you know, I mean, I can't know the full scope of exactly why they would do this or who's doing it or whatever. I mean, if I'm right, I can pretty much back into some very key primary players that for sure would be involved. Andrew Colvette definitely being one of them. But at the end of the day, the lies would not be nefarious, in my opinion, if what they're doing is covering up for this thing that I and they believe was done with pure intentions, with the fate of the world potentially hanging in the balance, which I absolutely believe is what they believe. And, I say it in every video, and we'll say it again. If that is the case, and me doing this series is causing them problems, that all they have to do is just ask, and I'll take them down. And again, my purpose of this is to try to, once I put it together, is to try to lessen the pressure being put on them. And at the same time, I am a YouTuber. So, if stories about Erica talking to, 15-year-old, I'm still going to do the videos. That's just what it is. But as it relates to this, people thinking that they've murdered Charlie Kirk is a very different thing than that, right?
It doesn't seem very Christian-like to me. But it gets worse. Because Brian Harpole has offices for his security company right outside the front gate for Fort Huachuca. Here's an explanation from George Webb, who actually went down there to check it out.
Hey, George Webb right here, and this is where Brian Harpole's security company is, ISS, Integrated Security. This is the one that was following Charlie all those times and so forth, because they're learning how to do all that stuff right here at this gate at Fort Huachuca, right here. Here's the health club that supposedly went out of business and then was a banquet room, and now it's a health club again. Excuse me, it's right there. So you could recruit here at the health club. Also right there is the Calvary Church. So you could recruit at church or a Takimaki. These are three. Harpole's security is right in the middle of all of it. And
it is literally right in front of the gate to Fort Huachuca. Then it turns out that Erica Kirk starred in a movie that was never released that was filmed at Fort Huachuca. Erica's mother, Lori Franzfey, runs multiple companies involved in Department of Defense work, specifically with technology with ties to Fort Huachuca.
Guess what else? Since we are, again, only talking about this as it relates to my hypothesis on this channel, guess how many big scale movies have been filmed at Fort Huachuca, at least certain portions of them. Here you go. Okay, Captain Newman, MD, 1963. Clear and Present Danger, 1994. Great movie, by the way. Suppose They Gave a War and Nobody Came, Marching On, Quicksands, and various documentaries in the modern era. So that is a lot of movies that have been shot there. And why is that relevant? Because if you're doing a walkthrough or a run through of a thing like this, it's essentially you're doing a take of a movie. That's what I mean. That's essentially what you're doing when you do this live at UVU. And when they do that for large operations, military operations, they will build essentially identical models of the, of the compound they're going to breach. They did this for SEAL Team 6 at Area 51, if I remember correctly, that they built out the Osama bin Laden compound. I think, I read that online. Right? I think that's right? Whatever. This is something that they do, right? This is something that people do, when these operations are being put together, and the fact that they've done movies there, just, it lines up. You know what I mean? So let's continue and here's some other stuff that seems relevant.
So let's go through all of this. Blake Neff, Andrew Colvette, Brian Harpole, Erica Kirk, and Lori Franzfey all have ties to Fort Huachuca. Can we just stop here for a moment? Can we all stop pretending that this is normal? There is nothing normal about this. You are telling me that this nonprofit organization has all these people in leadership with relationships with the military.
I mean, it's completely normal, given the fact that they are high in the Republican establishment, or if it was Democrats, same thing. It's like, I feel like people don't really understand how the entire system works, but this is absolutely normal. Leadership in military connected to conservative, the two-party system are relevant. Connected to political action, connected to people who are in the defense industry, like, Erica's family or whatever. This is completely normal. Completely normal. The only thing that would be weird as it relates to this story is if they were there and they're lying about it, or pretending like they don't know where it is, because, like, why would they lie? What possible reason would you have to lie? You know what I mean?
But not just the military in general, this one specific fort in Arizona. Fort Huachuca is special because it is the location the Army trains people in intelligence work. They train people to work undercover. So why do all these people at Turning Point have ties to Fort Huachuca? And why were several of them seen there in the 2 days leading up to Charlie Kirk's assassination?
Again, insert my hypothesis. Does it answer that question? It does. Now, I understand that there are always going to be people who literally have their mind made up. Erica's a demon. Erica's evil. And she did all of this. But if that's the case, and you have Erica derangement syndrome, and I'm not saying that you're wrong necessarily, but I'm saying, like, if you get so hyper-focused on only Erica that you literally cannot look at the people around her, because you can be right about her, and you could be missing where the rest of it is, right? I'm not just talking about her. Look at Mikey McCoy. Look at Farnsworth. Look at Andrew Colvette. You're telling me that none of these people who are like Charlie's most close inner circle have demonstrated any accurately depicted grief at all? And how do you explain Mikey McCoy walking away like that, just like that? If it's a murder, what possible reason would he have to be doing that? Farnsworth, why would it be important for him to get up on the wall and take that video if it's a real murder? It's like, why would that be important? Anyway, let's continue.
This is not normal for a nonprofit organization. Let me explain how the military is structured, because it is helpful to understand what is going on. In the intelligence community, you have the national agencies like the CIA, but each branch of the military also has their own intelligence people. In the Army, there was the 110th Military Intelligence Brigade and the 111th Military Intelligence Brigade. Military intelligence includes espionage, or being a spy. The 111th is headquartered at Fort Huachuca in Arizona. They are a training-focused brigade. They operate what they call the U.S. Army Intelligence Center of Excellence. This is where the subject matter experts work, and people go there to learn how to be a spy. The 110th Military Intelligence Brigade was formerly headquartered at Fort Drum in New York. The 110th Military Intelligence was focused on operations and deployments. So people in the Army would get trained by the 111th and then do operations as part of the 110th. Mitch Snow used to be part of the 110th. Many years ago, he was stationed at Fort Huachuca as part of a joint task force to help secure the border. He was the person who found underground tunnels that cartels were using to smuggle drugs into the country. The 110th was inactivated in 2004. The staff was absorbed into the 10th Mountain Division, which remains headquartered at Fort Drum. Then in March 2025, 500 soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division were sent to Fort Huachuca to participate in the newly formed Joint Task Force Southern Border. This is the same thing that happened with Mitch Snow all those years ago. History is repeating itself. When Donald Trump won the election in 2024, he promised to secure the border. The military has been helping in this effort. The headquarters for the Joint Task Force Southern Border was Fort Huachuca, Arizona. There was a major money aspect to all of this. Congress sets the budget for the Department of Defense overall, but within that budget, the military can move money between departments to respond to the priorities of the president.
All right, we're going to skip forward a little bit here, and he's going to be talking about what Mitch said and then what he could verify, cross-referencing what's true.
All these different elements from across the military coming together to work on a unified mission. In this case, the southern border. So Fort Huachuca is suddenly flush with money. They have all these new soldiers that are going to be stationed there. So they've been taking all these old buildings and they are repurposing them for expanded operations. This is exactly what Mitch Snow described. The morning of September 9th, the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered, Mitch was looking for where he could get his old paperwork. He was getting coffee and he ran into soldiers he recognized as being from his old unit, the 10th Mountain Division. They talked, he bought them coffee, and they explained to Mitch that he should go to the temporary headquarters for the Joint Task Force Southern Border. They gave him directions. Then Mitch Snow went to the guard gate at Fort Huachuca, and as they were checking his ID, he asked them directions on how to get to the temporary headquarters for the Joint Task Force Southern Border. I'm emphasizing this because the building that the meeting took place in, with Brian Harpole, Cabot Phillips, and the congressmen and all those lieutenant colonels, was the temporary headquarters for the Joint Task Force Southern Border. Captain Neff, who's the cousin of Blake Neff, is the Force Protection Commander, which is a subunit assigned to the Joint Task Force Southern Border. Here is what I believe is happening, allegedly. It looks to me like someone in the military diverted funds meant for the southern border and used that money to assassinate Charlie Kirk. But even if we assume that the military was not involved in the murder, it seems like they were doing something with...
It does, doesn't it? It does seem that way. It does. Which seems more likely, though? Does it seem like in order to land a hot one into a single target that you need to go through all of this effort that we're looking at forts and get 1 million people there? They got to plan this whole thing out, and then they're just going to end up, using this kid over here or if you have to go through all of this effort, are you actually looking at a very large operation where you're going to be faking it and you need to fool the world. The world needs to believe this. And so you're going through all of this effort because there is a much larger thing at play. Now, I alluded to the bigger picture in my live stream last night when I discussed this, and I have been intentionally saving it for later. Probably the very last episode is where I'm going to tie this all together, because I do believe that there is a much larger part of this that it puts like more specificity about what I'm saying when I say how critical it is that they remain in power for the next 12 years, because it has to do with AI and what is going to essentially dictate the rest of potentially the future of the country. And I believe they're right. I absolutely believe they're right. That is why I keep on saying, I'm like, look, I'm sure that they did not anticipate a lot of things that have happened since it happened. And, anyone, if I'm right, talking about it publicly with a platform as big as mine certainly would have been a bad thing. But what I'm doing is, as soon as I put it all together, I'm looking at the landscape and I'm like, there are a few people who need to know this because they are causing 100 times more damage than they would. Like if I can, shut that valve off, this will have been a net positive. That is literally what I am doing here. If I'm right, then it's like, because if I'm wrong, who cares? If I'm wrong, I'm in it. Like, oh, remember that dimwit who had this super detailed thing that he spent hours and hours and hours on? He thought Charlie was alive. What an idiot. I'll wear that, dude. If I'm wrong, I will just wear that. Idiot. Overconfident moron. And you can take that into the next time that I say, I think I figured something out. You'd be like, oh yeah, like Charlie was alive. I'll wear that. But in terms of what the impact will be, if the right people kind of go, oh, because I know if I'm right, there's no world where Charlie ever surfaces publicly under any circumstances. Certainly under no circumstances where they could potentially get outed, like really get outed, If he's going to be operating in the background, there would be such a large vetting process before he would ever talk to anyone new, But there's enough people inside of this thing that he can do everything he needs to do from the shadows. And now he's safe from the types of attacks that he was facing when they were trying to put him in federal prison. And listen, being an invisible ghost in the influence game is the strongest place that you can possibly be. Most people will not understand that, but I do. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, and we will get to many more things in the next episode. This one, I just wanted to do one where I showed you what I'm talking about, where it's like you just take the things that people are investigating and insert my hypothesis, and it all makes sense. That's what we got. Love you guys. Bye-bye. By the way, if you watch this whole episode and have not watched the first 4, you need to go watch the first 4 for sure, because this on its own probably sounded like nonsense.